Hello, friends, and welcome to another podcast. Today, I am so excited to share with you a conversation I had with my dear friend and fellow mural artist, Ian Ross. Ian is a multidisciplinary artist. He got started with ceramics, he went into painting, murals, and now is doing this incredible form of land art called sand raking. So we're going to dive into all kinds of Ian's artistic practice, big topics like consciousness, spirituality, art, culture, all my favorites. If you're like me, you're going to enjoy this. We get real deep, and Ian is just one of the most humble, incredible people on the planet. A real honor to be able to sit down with him in his living room up in Mill Valley, California, and talk about all these great things. So without further ado, let's jump into today's podcast with Ian Ross. Real quick, before we jump into the conversation with Ian, I wanted to take a minute to do some housekeeping. I got a lot of projects happening. This is the spring of 2023. Have a few mural projects finished, got a few more coming up, but I'm really excited for a new yard sculpture that I'm working on. This is going to be stainless steel, a perfect outdoor placement thing to bring some beautiful energy and ambiance to any outdoor space. So whenever you may be listening to this, if there's a way that you can support this unsupported podcast, it would be by checking out some of my art. So I'd really appreciate if you feel any interest in checking my work out, to head to my website, striderpatton.com/store. Any purchase or recommendations to anyone else is felt deeply within my heart. So thank you all very much. I'll be keeping you updated with all kinds of new projects in the future. And the best way to always stay up with me is through my newsletter, striderpatton.com/newsletter. All right, let's get in there with Ian Ross. All right, welcome everyone. Today I am in the house of a good friend and incredibly talented artist, Mr. Ian Ross. Ian, I met you years ago, and you have been a mentor to me, allowing me to help you out on a couple projects when I was kind of getting started with my work. Just an all-around wonderful human being, super talented guy, and been looking forward to this conversation for a while. So you want to say hello and maybe a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much. That's such a gracious introduction. I appreciate it. I don't know if I'm a mentor. I feel more like a peer, more like a good friend. But yeah, just honored to be doing this with you. I'm excited for the new direction that you're heading and into the podcast world. I listened to tons and tons of podcasts, just being alone on a giant wall on a lift, freezing in the cold, or in my studio by myself for 12 hours a day, whatever it is. It's a solitary existence, this art thing sometimes, which is fine. I'm actually very good with that.
Yeah. Likewise, I've crushed hundreds of hours of podcasts and audiobooks at walls in the studio, like you're saying. Yeah, I've actually didn't really have much of an experience in the art career before that, so I don't really have something to compare it to, maybe before the era of podcasts. But it's a big part of my life, and I've been loving doing it, and we got lots more coming, so thank you for being one of the first.
Nice.
You were at the top of the list when I finally pulled the trigger at doing this. So
awesome.
So
honored
thanks,
to be
man.
a part of it. Sorry for any misfires or scheduling conflicts, but we finally made it. So
it's the nature of our work too, man. Things change around a lot. So yeah.
Definitely.
Well, we're in your home. We are in Northern California. We are in Mill Valley, which is where you're from, right? This hometown here.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Larkspur, Corte Madera, just over the way. But second I turned 18 and got out of high school, I moved down to Southern California to live on the beach and make art and go to a junior college and surf and just kind of live that Southern California lifestyle and just kind of be out there and supporting myself and free and doing whatever I had to do to get by, like sleeping in a bed in a living room, a tiny little studio apartment with another friend, and eating top ramen every day and flipping burgers to get by.
Oh yeah.
Doing whatever I had to do. But it was that independence that I really craved. So coming back here now, Mill Valley is always a place that I wanted to live. I just love being closer to the mountain and the redwoods. And each town in Marin County is kind of unique. It kind of has its own little microclimate and qualities that make it different. Some towns are warmer, some places are breezy and cold like Sausalito, but I just was always obsessed with Mill Valley and the redwoods and being close to the ocean. So when I finally made it back here, I've been in this place actually for 15 years, and
Yeah.
I don't know. The next phase will come when it comes, but for now, I feel super grateful to be able to live here in this beautiful place.
Yeah.
And work here.
Yeah. And I think, people around Northern California and definitely beyond, I think maybe have seen your art in the form of murals and also your sand raking, which I definitely want to get into later. But you said your entrance to the art world was really for ceramics is what you studied. That's right? Mm-hmm. That's cool.
My parents were both artists as well, so I grew up with them doing ad design and graphic design from home in the studio, kind of like I have here now, and everything pen and paper, creating fonts by hand, and I was just always in their business trying to look over their shoulder and grab all their fancy pens and tools and things like that. And I never really knew another life or direction, and they were kind of hippies and just doing what they had to do to get by, and they never steered me any other direction. And when I got to high school, they offered ceramics, and I was just like, oh my God, I have I have an elective that I can choose whatever class I want to take. And freshman year in high school, first semester, I took ceramics, and I continued to take ceramics every single semester for the rest of high school, and for 7 years in college, getting a bachelor's degree, a BFA in ceramics, actually. So
nice.
Yeah, I fell in love with it. Something about the tactile nature and the relationship with the medium is so unique. You can't rush it. You can't force it. You really have to kind of adapt your working methods to suit that. And it's earth, and I've always felt really close to nature and close to the earth, and it just is, it's super rewarding when you can make it all work.
Yeah. And how did you find your way into painting and murals?
Well, I guess I was always kind of drawing. It's funny, when I was a kid, I used to draw in a really similar kind of fashion that I do now, but it was always just these super simple monsters with giant teeth and simple eyeballs. I was not rendering anything, but I just would draw these teeth that were the major focus of these little monsters. And those shapes are so much like what I do now in all my murals, these kind of gestural brushstroke form that can become a leaf or a tooth or an eyeball or a bird or fish, and that kind of gestural application is something that I've just been drawn to for a long time, that it just feels like a natural sort of working process, I guess, being in the moment, not thinking too far ahead or behind, and just always being reactive to the composition as it develops.
Yeah, that's something a few years back when, like I said at the beginning, you let me assist with you for a couple bigger projects that to the scale I hadn't done yet. So I really it was an incredible learning experience to help you be on scissor lifts and map stuff out, and you would fill outline shapes and say, fill these, and just seeing how you approach, a big wall and adding layer and layer and layer and seeing the details start to come through. It's a different style, of course, than mine. So it was really fun to be a part of the process and seeing you work through just kind of finding these images and allowing them to come out. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, I could see you creating big shapes and big movements, and then you just kind of start going into them and teasing them out and creating more shapes, and just you get really far into it. Just wondering if you could share a bit more about kind of that process, or if there is planning, really detailed planning, or if it's really freeform, maybe projects, some are yes and some on one side and some are the other. But maybe a bit more about that process for you.
Yeah, the process is really what the work is about, is that this idea that I kind of came across, I guess, and really hashed out in college and in lectures and learning about the history of art, learning about contemporary art, and really honing in on the notion that if I have no idea where this thing is going to end up, and I'm just instinctually adding and reacting to the composition as I go, it's going to be more original than if I have an idea and a plan and I sketch it and that's what it's going to look like. And if I don't even know what it's going to look like, then I feel like I can contribute more to the canon of art history and be more of an individual if I'm just doing whatever purely is happening in the moment for me. So working that way now in 25, 30 years, I don't know, a long time, 30 years almost, everything kind of carries over one to the next, and it's a visual language and a process that's really developed and allowed me to kind of go deeper and explore like this work here. And then people can make inferences into the compositions and find things in there, and there isn't anything specific, but there's things that are suggestive, and those things are kind of emerging from my subconscious, and it's really fun to see other people find things in the work and make conclusions that I hadn't thought about. But it really all comes back to just the physical satisfaction of drawing a brushstroke and kind of extending the radius of my wrist, the radius of my elbow, and then my shoulder, and then a small roller on a pole or a big long brush, and just finding ways to have like a fun physical relationship with the work that is not unlike clay. Like clay is such a physical medium. You have to really, put a lot of energy into it to center the clay, throw on the wheel, to, work through reclaim. I just worked through 2,000 pounds of reclaimed clay in my studio that's been accumulating for years. Since COVID, just garbage cans and buckets, and it's all dry and solid, and I had to break it up with a digging bar, and it's just crazy exercise.
Wow.
I don't have a pug mill. Someday I will, but that's a mechanism that can do that for you. But that physicality of finding a way to paint in this gestural, abstract, fast, spontaneous way just really was the most satisfying thing for me. And I would draw in a sketchbook in that way before I started painting. When I turned 18 and got out of the house, I also started traveling internationally with friends that I'd met in Southern California, and basically started traveling to Europe or somewhere at least once or twice a year. And I would, work at my burger shop job or valet, and I'd pay for my community college, and the rest would just get saved up to get a ticket. And once I had an airplane ticket, then I was going on that trip, and I had no money then, but then I had to save up the other amount of money that would last me on that trip. And I started to see graffiti in person for the first time on that first trip, and got to really appreciate the evidence of speed in that work, and just the pure confidence in those gestures that, sorry to stray off the thing, but I met an Italian friend named Francesco that lived in Newport, and I was in the beach in Newport Beach, and he was right across the street and also going to Orange Coast College, and he moved to California just to move to California from Italy because he's 18 years old and wanted to get out of his parents' house as well. And a week after meeting him, he invited me to come back to Italy with him during spring break. And I'm just like, I should do this. Yes, okay, let's go. And the first place he took me was a legal graffiti jam next to these train tracks outside of Milan. And some of the best writers in Europe were there doing massive pieces, all live, DJ out, everybody hanging out. And it just blew my mind. My mind was just I was changed that day watching these guys just do these giant wild style, crazy, beautiful. And this was in 1997. So, I think pre-Euro paint, I think old school paint then, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it was just the early days of Montana and stuff, but it was just unbelievable to see how these guys could produce art on that level. And it forever inspired me. And I started doing that in sketchbooks with a pen and just drawing in a way that was just freestyle, kind of automatic. And when I started painting murals, it all kind of just continued that working process more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's something that having conversations with other artists and friends, I think it's something that comes out once you reach a certain point maybe in your experience of, an artistic practice is understanding that it really is about the process and not so much the outcome. Like you said at the beginning of that, if you're really going for the outcome, a rigid thing, then you're kind of fixed into that, and you're not allowing maybe the feeling, the subconscious to express through you at that time. And that's, I think, something, talking with people that maybe don't have that creative outlet for themselves can get caught up, looking at social media and seeing the best of the best from around the world, 365, always in their phone.
Can be intimidating.
And there's the social comparison, but you hear about people who have been doing it, and it really is about the process of making, and outcomes happen whether they're good or bad or whatever subjective term you want to use. But it's for a lot of artists that I really respect and love what they do, and I either get to speak with them or hear them talk about it, and it's process driven. Yeah, I think there's something really there. Yeah, I've been doing the murals, which is kind of how I first met you, and you had a gallery in San Francisco for a while. How long did you have that gallery?
We had the gallery for 4 years, I think maybe a little more than 4 years. And that kind of came out of positioning myself in the tech hub of the world after having a studio at Facebook headquarters for a couple of years in 2010. That happened out of donating some art to a charity event. I was just doing live painting all the time and giving paintings out to people for charity reasons whenever I had the opportunity, whenever someone asked. And I happened to meet a chef from Facebook at a charity event. And he's like, you should come down and do a mural in our cafe and do it. They would love it if you did a live mural. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So ended up doing that mural, and they reacted really well and ended up becoming kind of like a part of the campus there for a couple years. And when that all ended, when Facebook went public, I had this kind of like large space that was a warehouse that was just going away. And I was like, I wonder if I could just move this large space idea and this public studio that I'm working in into like a real public space and allow people to come in and experience the process and then show art from artists that I like and call it an art gallery, I guess. It's a little odd to decided to like use my name, which it just seemed like the natural thing to do because that's my brand, I guess, or that's something that's already got a network around it. Like I'd been using social media for a couple of years and it just seemed like the logical way to do it. And it wasn't anything that was really planned out. Again, like even the big like transitional phases in my career have never been this like playbook that I'm following or this like way of doing things that I was told were going to work. It's just something that feels okay in the moment and it's organic, just like my artistic process. So yeah, that was literally all I did for 4 years really was create work to pay the rent on that place when the art didn't sell, and then when the art sold, it covered itself. But it was pretty wild. It was in Soma on 4th and Brannan, and we had huge outdoor mural walls that we would curate and have artists paint the walls around each show, and murals on the roof and murals on the neighbors' buildings on the outside, and spent a ton of time and energy with my oldest friend Rob. Came in as a partner on the project, and my partner, and we all basically just invested everything we had in that space for a few years, and it was incredible. It was kind of a way to give people an experience with an art gallery and an art show that wasn't as stuffy and judgmental, and kind of lower that barrier to entry, where we would just go to Costco and get some cheap box wine and open the place up and get some music and spend a little bit of money on each opening and just try and create an environment and an energy that was welcoming and casual, where people could kind of like learn about art and artists and ask questions and not feel stupid and feel like there's someone looking over the desk like sizing them up whether or not they're really going to buy anything. And it was extremely popular. It was a really fun time. Yeah, I think our soft opening we had like 700 people come through. Wow. And it was we were just like, oh god, like I hope the fire department doesn't come through. I think the capacity is technically like 49 because we only had one entrance and one exit in the same area, and we figured out you could fit like 250 people in there if you really wanted to, but through that experience learned that doesn't make a lot of sense because nobody can move or breathe, and you need to have a bit of a flow there. But it was a great learning experience, and it was almost like an installation where the whole point was just to like cultivate energy and share an experience, It was wonderful.
I can imagine. I mean, just that was like right when I moved to the city in like 2012. I came to San Francisco and just hitting the art scene here. Went definitely before I knew you. Went to plenty of shows there, and I remember all kinds of incredibly talented people. And to see where a lot of them are at now, it's like, oh my god, you really caught some people on their emerging trajectory, and now there's some characters that have really exploded. And I was like, oh man, I remember them at Ian Ross Gallery back in the day. Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine that was a really great, just kind of like networking thing for you too. Totally. Is meeting artists, but also like collectors and people around San Francisco. Yeah, it was so fun. I mean, we would pretty much be right down to the wire every single opening that we had, fixing the walls, hanging the last few things, mopping the floor. Like we just did all of it ourselves. And then I would just like put a sport coat on over like my paint clothes, and like that was it. And like people would get all decked out, and it looked amazing, and no one could see it. We were just sweating and just we would always pull it off like right at the last minute, but. Don't touch the walls. It's still wet. Still wet paint. I like built these floating walls and covered up the like giant glass block like tower that was in the back. The whole place was like red when we got it, and we turned it into like a very sleek kind of generic space. Installed all the track lights, and
Yeah, it was super duper fun.
Yeah.
It was incredible, even like the outdoor aspect of it. We hung 12-foot by 16-foot framework that we anchored into the cement, where we could have 7 murals rotate each time, and we would just change out the plywood. If anyone needs any plywood murals, I have all of them in storage.
Oh my God.
They shouldn't be in storage. They should just be out there. And some of those artists, sadly, we had it in storage in Petaluma, and some of them, they were all stacked together. Even though there was plastic in between them, some of the wood just rotted. It just absorbed moisture. So we started using like really thin, like masonite sheets, and then eventually used like thicker, more high quality plywood that's held up really well. But some of the stuff that would be the most valuable just completely rotted and decayed. So
impermanence.
I had to just take it to the dump. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's, everything is ephemeral and fleeting, except maybe clay. But
yeah,
I took photos of all the ones in the dump that I was throwing away, just so that if the artist ever came back someday, like, no, that,
yeah.
I know you have that thing, and I've got someone that wants to offer me X amount for it. But yeah, it was a cool experience.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about letting go and just being in the moment. And, you shared that some of the biggest pivotal changing watershed moments of your life and career are completely unplanned, like for most of us always. But we also, like some of us more than others, but to have this element of this idea that we have some control in our lives. And so do you have like a direction or plans, or like how do you look down the road thinking of art like as a business for you? Of course, being receptive and open to things shifting and going with the flow. And at a certain point, doing art as a business, we have to have some kind of
Totally.
plan, maybe, or maybe you don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
such a great question. Like, I listened to Vantage Point podcast with JB. And he always tries to work his way down that angle to, like, how do you make this work as a career? Because that's what I'm doing too. And I'm always curious what artists do to like get by. And honestly, like I'm so bad with planning and logistics and paperwork and just keeping things together. I'm just so scattered, and I have a terrible memory. It's wild, and I think it's like so much about my process and about being in the moment and about just being like available to react and so focused on just presence and just this whole way of working that I've never really had much of a thought going forward or a plan further out. But at the same time, I'm making work now that is years in the making and won't be finished for another year or two. So there is like a different time scale overlaid onto like one of my processes, bronze. Like this is a scale model of a bronze piece that I'm doing with the team and some architects from New Zealand that are friends that are helping me out with all the CAD design and the higher end aspects of the geometries relating to the foundry. And that's an incredible process because it really makes me look at the bigger picture and kind of slow down my manic way of being and look harder at what people need along the way and how to kind of be more sensible and less scattered. But it's really tough. I really have learned to kind of let go of portions of my life and my process that I'm not as good at so that I can focus on being the crazy artist in the moment, which is, it's great. It's good and bad. I have a lot of help with those things that I'm not good at. But then at the same time, if I was ever to be all of a sudden all by myself in the world and had to function and like pay my taxes and pay the bills and handle, normal stuff like that, it would take an adjustment for sure. I could figure it out, and I used to do it by myself. I used to, paint live like 5 nights a week and slang the painting, and it was just like a one-man show and just managed to get it all done on my own. But
yeah.
Now that I'm getting older and I'm learning to kind of think more broadly, it's helpful. I'm learning to meditate. I'm learning to kind of like slow myself down and have a bit more of a bigger picture thought. But I don't really have like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or anything like that. I just want to continue doing what feels good and keep kind of following my gut, really. It all comes back down to that. Like if I can really remember to do that thing that makes me the happiest, that feels the best, I typically I have a mechanism that will stop me from doing something when it starts to feel like, no, this direction, even just in the beginning of a certain project or an inquiry or something that just doesn't sit right with me for some reason, I now have a bit of that luxury where I can be selective with the projects that I do and the directions that I go. But yeah, working with clay has definitely like changed my working flow and the pace at which work can be made, which is really nice. It's something that COVID is like a silver lining that came out of that isolation and lockdown and things, was that I just was in my studio working with clay again. I was like, well, if I'm going to be stuck here for an indefinite amount of time, I might as well like not be breathing paint fumes and not have all of this paint off-gassing around me and start to work with that thing that now I kind of have the time to do again. So it's been nice to kind of change the pace up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I love being fast and gestural and painting as quickly as I can and doing that thing that's just instant. You know, spray paint is instant. Murals are just changing so fast. Like the mural I was working on today, the guys were like, "You're going to be done today?" I'm just like, no, there's a whole process. There's all these layers and things.
Yeah, I know, man. It's I myself very much used to try to control a lot more than is absolutely possible. I definitely have had an analytical side to my mind, and when I started to think about art as a business and my livelihood, this is just something like really in the last couple of weeks I've kind of put together for myself. But you know, just like they say, like garbage in, garbage out, like good food in, like healthy body, but also like information. And I realized that the last several years, you know, between my business as my art and my wife Brooke's business with her children's theater, you know, we're both artists and we need to learn business because we have two businesses in the arts. So I was like, I need to learn some business stuff because I know zero. Yeah. So that's really a huge percentage of what I've been consuming information-wise the last few years. And recently I've just kind of been like, you know, I don't know, just feeling a little out of touch, just, I don't know, something not sitting right in me. And I kind of just had this epiphany. I'm like, this is like a huge amount of information I've been putting in myself. And at some point it's like, okay, like enough is enough. Like I've got a lot of information, but I just keep like dumping more in. And I've been like, you know what, like there's a lot, like you really can't control almost anything. We can try and we can trick ourselves into it and we can give ourselves some direction and have plans and goals and stuff. But what I'm really, really trying to work on in myself right now is just like some surrender, like really learning to let go and really learning to kind of just go back to being an artist just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I kind of lost it. And what you were saying about, you know, creating the right energy or the right vibes and you having the intuition to feel in yourself when, you know, something's like, I don't know, this isn't really maybe feeling right. I think that just takes time for people to get. And, you know, a lot of people probably don't get it because they're maybe not that in tune with themselves. But that intuition is a really powerful thing. And to be able to feel like the wrong energy, you know, could be a helpful thing in thinking about work and business and projects, but also just like the energy. Like I heard someone say it, like two basic rules in life, like follow your enthusiasm and make stuff without any like idea of what it should be. So pay attention to what makes you feel good and do that thing. That's as simple as it can get. And I was like, oh man, like just, you know, the way that person said it was so eloquent.
Yeah.
And usually like it's this one sentence like bangers that just, you know, stick with you. Care about how you feel, follow your enthusiasm, and make stuff without any comparison or judgment or expectation of outcome. And I think, you know, this is like all stuff I'm like processing for myself recently, which is like, man, I really haven't been paying attention to like what makes me feel good in terms of like making art. Like, sure, I enjoy it. I really get a thrill, but thinking about some projects the last few years, I'm like, that was not enjoyable at all from like the beginning all the way through to the end. And you also kind of said it, like you also you're at a point in your career where you can say yes and no to some projects, but when you're getting started, you want to take everything you got offered to you.
I still want to do that. I still am inclined to just, yes, like no matter what, like I want to never lose this dream or this reality that I get to make art for a living. It's just so mind blowing every day, you know? And I just always, I didn't ever have money or like stability. So I just am like, always like, you're going to pay me anything? Like, okay, like, you know, just in case there's no work down the road, but you just can't do things that way. You've got to have a little better grip on things.
Yeah, it's a little, you know, unsettling and scary because you're just walking into the unknown every day. But aren't we all?
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what's gonna happen the next time you get on a highway, across the street. You know, it's like we're all living in each other's worlds, and we gotta just have some trust. It seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Painting murals has been like a massive foundation of like my business, I guess, as an artist for the last decade. And as incredible as that is, and most of the time I do have creative freedom, I kind of started running up the hill or like pushing the, you know, Sisyphus metaphor, like just like this shouldn't be this hard, and realizing that maybe, you know, I wasn't letting myself be as happy with the process and doing the thing that I want to do the most, whatever that might be, even though most of the time the mural looks like something I would want it to look like. It started to feel like art as a service in a way, and I was giving away too much of that control and starting to kind of get that confused sort of feeling like you mentioned. And that's where the drawing on the beach came from, was that feeling of, you know, there's got to be some way to like just do something just for the pure sake of doing it, you know, just to go and make a thing because it makes me feel good as it can as an artist. And somebody sent me, because of, you know, Instagram has opened my eyes as it has for anybody to so many different ways of working and types of art, but somebody sent me a beach drawing from Andres Amador in San Francisco on the beach, and I was just like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything like that. And then,
so I wanted to get in here, so just tell people, if they haven't seen this, like just describe what the beach drawing is.
So when the tide goes out, tides are different all over the world. The closer you are to the equator, typically the less tidal movement there is. Tides are affected by the sun and the moon. The further you get from the equator, the bigger the tidal shift and the larger the surface revealed. When the tide goes out, it typically leaves a smooth sand surface or whatever type of sediment is there. Sometimes it's rocks, sometimes it's mud. But on a sandy beach like Ocean Beach in San Francisco, you're left with this beautiful, smooth. Anyone that's walked on the beach at low tide knows that the sand typically is more firm if the beach is flat. And this artwork is made with a rake. It's just a simple leaf rake that's adjustable, and it has kind of stronger metal tines, and you can just walk on the beach and draw. And it's a canvas that completely resets itself every, 6 to 12 hours, depending how long that tidal cycle is that day. And I was exposed to it just by the beauty of a network on Instagram, and somebody that followed Andres was an artist that did calligraphy with his rake. And I don't know how exactly I got in touch with him, but I was like, this looks insane. Like, this looks like so much fun. And this is exactly how I paint, with like a calligraphy brush that can be either wide or skinny. Depending how I hold it, I usually will just have one color, and I will just go with one pass until I need to switch to another color. But I like to just use that one brush and just work quickly. And that's the exact same way that the rake interacts with the sand. You can either do a wide stroke or a skinny stroke, and you just walk around and draw on the ground. And it doesn't require materials. It doesn't require anything except a tool that's relatively rudimentary. It could be a tree branch, it could be a stick. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked into it a little bit more, and after that guy explaining to me what the rake was that really worked, it's adjustable. I duct taped, the first thing before I even did one, I duct taped a broom handle to it because I knew I wanted to have some more leverage like I do with a roller when I'm painting. And just fell in love the first second that I tried it. It was just this incredible connection to place and to nature and to my process on a level that was completely unlimited, where this gesture, this brushstroke could be literally 500 feet long if I wanted it to. If I wanted to do the work to run back and forth and draw that brushstroke, you could do that, and it's like, wow, this is a way to expand this process in a way that is, no one can own it. No one can say, oh, this needs to be sold for this amount and should be worth X amount in 20 years if I buy it from X gallery and yada yada, and all those ways that people pull at artists and associate their work with value. It's wonderful to be able to make a living as an artist, but sometimes you just want to get back to the reason why you do it and the purity And that enabled that.
Yeah, I mean, man, talk about an exercise in impermanence. You
Yeah.
know, just the gentle cadence of the ocean giving you a clean slate each day.
It's wonderful. If anyone ever wants to do it, hit me up. Like I've really, I don't know why I haven't been able to devote time to it. I think I overthink it. And I did this when I was doing it a lot too. Sometimes I would just get lost, and it would be so hard to get myself back into that situation where I'm at the place and I'm ready and I've got the drone and the water and the food, and it really is super taxing. Like I'll walk miles and miles doing these things, and the second I start doing it again, it's like, oh, this is work that matters. This is work that like has an impact. This is so worthwhile, you know, every single time. And now I did one with Zane Meyer from Chopping Down Films recently at Sutra Baths. And before that, I hadn't done one in like 2 years. And I haven't done one since then.
Whoa. I didn't know it's been that long.
Yeah,
Wow.
and there's no reason for it. Like, there's no reason why. I would travel to do these things. I would do them every single time there were good low tides, which
You've
is
been
usually
around
like
the world
twice a
doing
month.
this.
Yeah.
Right.
I've sussed out. I've tried them in places where they didn't work in so many different ways. And then I've figured out places where they really work well.
You've even attached it to a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
To like cover ground.
Totally. I got a bike that I got tires for it, and figured out this lever system, and you can just expand like the stroke, like the way that I like to draw a big brush stroke on a wall. I like the curve to kind of have a purity and a smoothness to it. And when you're on a wall, you can only really ever reach, like if you're painting the wall, you're going to be within 6 feet of the wall, right? And you're going to have a perspective that's super condensed looking down that surface of the wall. So you can kind of see if your arch or your curve wavers somewhere and you need to walk all the way over there and fix it. It's the same thing standing on the ground. You know, I'm about 6 feet above the ground, and I can see if that massive long shape gets weird down there in the middle. I got to walk all the way back down there, and you learn to trust your peripheral vision and understand a place in a way that's totally different than anything else. Learning how sand moves was eye-opening. Learning how landscapes are in flux and there's erosion happening, you know, there's invasive species, there's development, there's all these effects on a place that are constant, and then there's our human effect with the way that the world's changing because of our carbon emissions and climate change and sea level rise. Like a lot of these places aren't going to be the same. They're already changing. Like as a surfer, I notice these things, you know, after 30 years of surfing almost every day. You really can feel and see the difference in the ocean and the different environments around it.
I was going to say, your history with surfing, you know, it just seems like such a beautiful creative outlet for you for being a surfer your whole life, and then being able to create beauty in a place that you love and respect so much. There's lots of poetry there, dude. I think the impermanence, your connection to the ocean personally, and also just, you know, I don't know, mythologically or something. It's, you know, it's like where the land meets the sea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gravity, I think, there. And like you said, not being able to own it. And yeah, it's come up in a couple other conversations for me, but artists who are doing it full time, you know, finding a different creative outlet that is not based on any kind of value.
Yeah.
It's just for feeling, you know. And that's what I'm kind of finding now with myself. I've been really getting into writing and seeing that kind of as like a new form of creative outlet for me. But yeah, the sand raking, oh man, I'll have links in the show notes, everybody. But it is something else, dude. It is really beautiful.
I've got to pay respects to not only Andres Homidor, but Jim Denovan from Santa Cruz, who's just the godfather, master of the craft, and has done it for decades longer than I have, and really taken it to like its logical limits of what's possible, and then even done massive installations with dry sand by piling it up in a way where it's not going to be tide affected, and doing huge pieces with solar lights in deserts, and just, I mean, it's incredible what he's done. He's definitely opened my eyes, and typically works in like a geometric fashion with radial symmetry. It's really recognizable. He also has a project called Outstanding in the Field, where they host these massive dinners on location on a beach or in a vineyard or on a mountaintop or something like that, and then source all the food and wine from local growers and farmers. It's a fantastic thing that he does. With my sand art, it's pretty recognizable because it looks like my murals and it's freestyle, it's spontaneous. So
Yeah.
I like to try and find and unlock like the code or like the way that landscape wants to be complemented rather than stamping an image on it, or like knowing exactly what it's going to look like beforehand. I've taken to trying to extend the natural lines and features of the landscape onto the beach as a way of almost like documenting the place as it exists when I did it and honoring it and kind of shedding light to how that place might change in the future because of whatever affects it in the development or erosion or sea level rise. And that's been really fun. It does take a little bit more preparation, whether looking at Google Earth or flying the drone ahead of time and starting to sort of map out where those cliff lines meet the beach and what the major, water feature is, or like the curvature of the estuary that's leading out in that particular place. But a lot of the best stuff comes from not knowing where it's going to end up and discovering it along the way.
Yeah, that does bring up an interesting point. It made me think, what is it like for bystanders, to see it? Because to really enjoy this thing, like the drone shots are just epic. But like you said, when you're just 6 feet off the ground, what kind of experiences or stories have you had with people around you? And that's cool about Ocean Beach, though, in San Francisco, because there's the road that winds up by Cliff House. Yeah. So there is an overlook that people in person can actually like get a pretty good like aerial view of it.
Yeah,
but
Sutro Baths ruins on the other side has a little beach that has a massive rock in the water, and then ruins on one side, the Cliff House restaurant on the other, the road, and then like the natural kind of cliff too. So you can actually get an overhead perspective as a bystander from almost any angle there, which makes it really, really unique. And those are the best ways for people to enjoy the process, or when there is some type of a natural elevation, whether it's cliffs or a boardwalk or a road, or a pier. It's really fun to be able to share it with people and give them a way of seeing a place that they maybe know really well in a new light, and that's been incredible to have people come up to me when I'm doing it and tell me how it's affecting them and what it means to them and for what reason. And it makes me super emotional.
There's another correlation as you were speaking to street art for me, which is interacting with what's already present. Like you said, not coming in just stamping something, but collaborating with what's already there. And that's what was so beautiful for me kind of in my early start with street art, was finding a location, recognizing architectural features, windows, pipes, walls, like texture, whatever, and playing off that instead of just coming in and stamping it. Getting my start with art at a like kind of professional level was murals, and sitting in my studio looking at a white rectangle canvas was a lot more intimidating than maybe like a 20-foot wide wall. It's like literally a blank page. Where do I start? Give me a window to play off of or something, But you were saying like with the landscape, like playing off what's already present.
Yeah, like I've always told people the same thing, that I'm so much more comfortable walking up to like 100-foot wall than having like 100 1-foot canvases in my studio, or having one 1-foot canvas in the studio, because you can continually like change your working format in the studio. You can second guess yourself. You can, like change your mind or like just get distracted or whatever. But when you're painting a wall outside, that wall's not going anywhere. Like everything else changes. The light changes, the weather changes, the people that are going to approach you have no control over that anymore. Whereas in the studio, you're isolated and you can just continually like over internalize things. So I was always, just like you said, so much more comfortable with putting myself in that place where I have no more control over all those variables. And it's just the one thing. If you get stuck, take a step back. Take a deep breath, sit down for a minute, have something to eat, and just get back up there. Keep going, because that's the only canvas that you get to work on until it's done, and there's something awesome about that.
Yeah, man.
It connects us to nature too. I think there's like, I don't exactly remember how I phrased it, but there is a connection, I think, with like graffiti and nature. It's a way for us to be like connected to nature in an urban environment. It's a way to kind of like the roots growing over the temple, like we saw in Cambodia, it's that like organic layer, like taking back this stiff, hard, man-made thing in a way. And I just think that's so beautiful. And there's this kind of like growth that happens over this rigid 90-degree angle, block cement.
Totally. Yeah, that's something that really attracted me to street art, and graffiti came first, street art came second. But for someone who never really did graffiti with letters, but more imagery based work with street art, the art injected into overlooked, underutilized spaces in the city and breathing life back into them in form and color, there's just something so beautiful about it. And that's really what attracted me to get into that space. And just seeing like once one piece goes up in a city, others start to accumulate. And it's just like life starts to like come out.
Yeah, the walls will speak.
All of a sudden the whole wall will be crushed and everything. And then again, to come back to impermanence, the city comes and buffs it out. And then the tide comes in and you restart.
Yeah. The first time I went to Barcelona was in 98 or 99, and I went with Rob, that same friend that I had the gallery with, and was at that point obsessed with graffiti, and street art was becoming a thing, and I was finding all different types of art on the street rather than just tagging, writing, and pieces and throw ups and things. And in Barcelona was by far the most. Like we started in Amsterdam, went to Paris, went to Barcelona, went to Eastern Europe. We went to like I think 10 or 11 countries, like 20 cities over the course of like 2 months. But Barcelona just had like every type of application you could imagine, whether it was like gluing tiles and wheat paste and like sculptural things, and it would all just take over every little hot corner or spot. And it was incredible. It was like galleries. Like I'm sure there's some really great documentation somewhere of some of those walls and those corners. But it all found a way to like evolve into this thing that was completely out of the control of an overseer or any kind of like one entity deciding or curating. The thing just like had its own life, its own energy. It's wild. Each wall just became a thing unto itself and grew and changed.
Yeah. From what I understand, that time period, Barcelona was like the spot in the world, definitely in Europe, but late 90s, early 2000s, I've heard from so many people that Barcelona was like the street art and graffiti place.
Yeah, the London police are just always residing over everybody.
Really?
There's always the little guys just like at the one place that other people hadn't quite gotten to, or just there was this consistent like visual language that they kind of dominated in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was always just so curious about who they were and what it was all about,
Totally. Yeah, it's a incredible culture. So I wanted to get into where you get your inspiration, or, we kind of touched on like painting process, and you say that you are very in the moment and allowing maybe your subconscious to move through you. But as you've kind of touched on a couple of times too, your connection with the natural world, I know, is definitely a big part of it. But yeah, maybe speak a bit about what gets you going in terms of ideas. Do you get hit like in the morning with an idea, or is it like when you enter the time to create? Are you constantly, do you have to like quickly sketch something out? Does it come, or how does it kind of happen for you?
Yeah, not a super morning person. I definitely am more of a night owl. Like I think I was born in the evening, and I really like to get warmed up and into a flow, and then I typically just gain all the momentum, and around the evening time, the end of the day, I bartended for years. I did live painting for years and years, and I would just always find my real stride after the sun went down, I guess. So I still am that way. I'll still work late into the night, and there's something about those wee morning hours when there's nothing else happening. Like you said, you've been getting up at 4 a.m. Like I rarely work till 4 a.m. anymore, but that's like that crazy magical hour when it's later than the late night owls and it's earlier than the early birds, and it's that dead time when no one's going to be emailing you or calling you. And I find inspiration is just overlaid through just every waking moment. Just being close to nature is something that I was fortunate to grow up here in Marin, like climbing trees and digging in the dirt and just looking at trees and animals and leaves and just my natural surroundings is like everything that I thought about and wanted to interact with and wanted to be a part of. And I find that my process like connects me to nature, and whenever I have free time, I'm out in nature, but I'm always thinking about what my work is doing or where it's going. And I can kind of overthink things, you know, and torture myself a little bit with like not just honing in on certain projects that I need to think about or certain things. But it definitely all connects. But no, you know, man, as an island, and I've had a harder time with people than I have had with like my natural world in my life. And I've been really good when I'm isolated, and I can be a bit of a hermit sometimes and just really get deep into the process or deep into like my experiences in nature. But I have to like remember how much I need people. And that's always like more of a work in progress, I guess, for me. That's where like this new work that I'm doing with these and like work that kind of came out of COVID is a way of like taking the energy that I'm putting into my process and like giving it directly to someone else and letting them then take that wherever it's going to go. And it feels like a contribution. Like the sand art is that way too. It's almost like a public service in a way. You know, it's fun to document it, and it's fun to create an image, but it really is just like about complementing the place. And so much of it has never been documented. You just go to do it just to do it. And people that come across it experience it and they value it in a way because it's like, oh, I'm here because I love this place too. I hiked out to this beach because this is something I do when I need to get close to nature. And to see you do this here, you know, it's just special. I feel like I won the lottery. I get to like witness this thing that's going to be gone in a couple hours. And I don't, you know, rarely will I like advertise it or put it out there ahead of time and just go and do the thing. So it's fun to feel like I can give something to others through my work, and that's something that I'm trying to like get better at. Inspiration, I guess, is mostly around that these days. It's like trying to be more selfless and find a way to like contribute to the world and do something that's not about me and look at the thing I can do, look at my pretty picture I made, give me money for it. You know, I don't really ever care about money or success in that way. I'm successful because I get to do what I love and it makes me happy. And if I can like improve somebody's day or like surprise them by handing them one of these at an art show or when I'm out and about and say, you know, this helped me a lot when I was having a hard time during COVID when everyone was locked down and people are dying and everything's fucked in the world, you know, like there was these little tiny environments that I was making that aren't unlike this, but just these little clay structures that I was calling dream huts that I envisioned maybe one day like a bird would land in one and live in it, or you could put a candle in it, or whatever that was for people. For me, it was a place where everything is okay. And it was just this small little like intimate environment that just was the thing that I made because of this crazy situation we were all facing as a global community. And one of the forms that came out of that was this ring to hold like a sphere, so the sphere didn't roll off the table. And I realized that like the sphere and the other forms were constantly like running away from you, but the ring would do the opposite. It would settle into your grasp. It would always fit with your physical geometry and soothe you in a way with its weight and its density. And I found myself kind of like massaging my sore muscle from painting and just found it settling to have it in the car when I'm stuck in traffic. And I'm like, what is it with this? Like, what is this thing? Like we were talking about the history with ceramics for all 4 years in high school and 7.5 years of college earning a bachelor's degree in ceramics, a BFA. Like all 4 years at junior college, all 3 years at Long Beach State, I took ceramics every semester, throwing on the wheel. I never once in all that time made a ring. Like it just wasn't a thing for some reason, I don't know, but yet it's this like pure geometry that is just, it has this like power to it. So it's like I'm unearthing this idea that I really don't know what it is or what it's about, but there's something just so incredibly satisfying about like giving this to someone and thinking that it might help relieve some of their stress. And like they might hang it in a tree somewhere, and then what I do when I'm out and about, I hang them in trees and I put them in places where you typically wouldn't expect to see artwork. Like last night, I went to the shopping center over here and I have a bunch of ones smaller than this, and I hung one like at Starbucks in front of the front door where everyone's going to line up in the morning at eye level, just right there. And it's so fun to see like how long those will last, you know? Mm-hmm. Some of them have been up for a while now, like maybe a year, some of them disappear really quickly. It's fun to think about who found it and what they thought about it and why would someone put that there, and was that put there for me? Like, was this a thing that's mass produced? I think it's pretty clear to tell that it's not. Now I'm stamping like a little initial on them. So
yeah.
But it's something that like you can't just tag the wall on the front of Starbucks, right? You can't wheat paste the front of Starbucks on like eye level right in front of people and think that it's going to last, but I can install like this little sculpture in plain sight, and it can just exist, and it finds a way to kind of like become a part of the environment where it isn't upsetting, but it's clearly out of place, and it's just fascinating to me. So this has been like this really cool little adventure. Yeah, people seem to react really well. It's something too that's just, it's so fun to surprise somebody with one of these and give it to them in a situation where they're ready to view art or talk about art, and people share stickers, you know, or they share whatever they make, sketches. And I've always wanted to have really cool stickers, but when you pull one of these out and hand it to somebody, they're like, I can have this? And it's like, yeah, like, no. And they're like, what? And it's like, yeah, it's a one-of-a-kind little sculptural thing that really doesn't take, it takes seconds for me to throw it. It takes, you know, a minute to trim it or whatever, and it's just the most satisfying form to throw and trim on the wheel. Something about this geometry is just phenomenal. It's called a torus. This is a ring torus. When the ring gets fatter and tighter, it becomes a spindle torus or a horn torus. And yeah, it's just, some theorize that this is the shape of the universe. If you were to draw a seam, if you were to like open this up, one seam around it and one seam around it, circumference and diameter, it's a rectangle when you unfold it. And it's just, yeah, it's something that seems to like counterbalance our physical geometry, our hands. Like I call it art for your hands. It's something that like, it just has like this presence and this weight and this like contained energy, because when you wedge clay before you throw it on the wheel, you're basically pushing the clay downward in a repetitive motion, and the clay starts to form a spiral, so the air bubbles get forced out of it. So the main function is to relieve the clay of the air bubbles, so that if there's an air bubble in something, when you fire it, it'll explode. So you get the air bubbles out, but then it also aligns the particles of the clay into a spinning motion before you ever put it on the wheel, rather than when it comes out of the bag, the particles are all disorganized and chaotic. So by wedging the clay, it's almost like I'm like, you know, using my energy to align those particles. And then when you put the clay on the wheel, you have to center it, and you're using your energy to condense it and align the particles even further, and then my hands create the form. And I feel like it like contains some of that energy, you know. People say they feel like crystals or something, like.
Yeah. Oh man, that's definitely, the Ian Ross sticker.
Yeah, it's something that, it's been two years now making these things, and I'm still honing in on like the ultimate geometries. And this one's pretty close, where it's about the thickness of a finger and your finger fits through it. Where it just naturally, it's like a fidget device, you know, or like it just settles you. And I've seen people that have had these now for a year plus that say they keep it in their car and they grab it every time they're in their car.
Wow.
They get stuck in traffic, it like soothes them. But there's a larger geometry that's about the size of like a golf ball that just settles into your hand as well. And then I've been making these ones that are massive, that are too big for my kilns, that would hang on the wall as well. So there's something pure and beautiful about looking at a circle. It's calming. It's like looking at a sunset, you know, or looking at a sunrise, or a window in a boat with the ocean outside, you know, the cycle of life, the purity of the form.
I use a lot of circles in my work, and it's something about like there's so much symbolism, but for me, I always think of infinity. No beginning, no end. You know, everything's now.
Yeah.
No linear time.
It's getting older, you know, it's something about like recognizing that I'm not going to be able to do this forever. It's maybe that's what it is too. It's that like, you know, we're all infinite, we're all connected.
So something I ask a lot of guests is, what are ideas and where do they come from?
Wow. That sounds like a Lex Friedman question.
Totally. He's the man, yeah.
Yeah, he's for sure.
Next, I'll ask you if you're scared of death. That's what I hear him always ask people.
Yeah.
I'm scared of dying.
And then what's the meaning of life? Like, why are we here? He works up to that in different ways with different people.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, where do ideas come from? Man, I don't know. I guess they come from just, surrendering to the process, just to living every day. And I mean, you don't even have to be awake. It's just, I think, an element of consciousness, you know, that is, I don't know, something that's like, what is consciousness, you know, like the ideas like float through the world and we just grasp them out of the air as they pass through us, or are they shared, you know, like people say like some twins that are artists like Los Gemios and Helen knows them, like they share dreams and they share a working process where they don't have to verbally communicate their process as they're working, and one will know what the other one knows as they go, which is really fascinating, you know? So it's like, are they sharing the idea? Does the idea exist between them and they're both like accessing it? It's a great question. I don't know. I'd love to hear people's insights about it. I think it's fascinating to hear the different ways of trying to chew on that one.
There's an incredible author, Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote the famous book Eat, Pray, Love, but then she wrote a follow-up book called Big Magic. And in that book, she talks with artists and creatives of all disciplines. And this is a big topic in that. And from that book, it sounds like a lot of people think that ideas are external and an artist is the bridge between idea and reality. Our ideas trying to manifest, and they'll find someone that they think can bring them into being. Because if the universe is all one and we're all made up of the same stuff, then we humans are the universe experiencing itself as a human. So if everything is all one and connected, then is the universe trying to expand and grow, and humans are creators. And so we make things. And she's just got these incredible stories from like, you know, really famous artists, like musicians, writers, everything. But I forget the writer, I think it was a woman, maybe a poet or something, but she said that she could feel a poem coming.
Yeah.
And it would like start to shake.
Like a train.
A train.
Yeah.
And she had this story like that she was out in the garden and she started to feel it come, and she ran into the house and was looking for pen and paper, and because she says that she can, if she doesn't have the pen and paper, it's gone,
right,
and she won't get it back.
I've heard that.
And so she found one, and she said she almost lost it. She wrote the poem backwards, like the train was like almost past her.
Oh, the chain of events.
Yeah,
like, yeah.
She wrote it.
Not like the letters are backwards. Like
I
red rum.
Yeah. Yeah, but
wow, that's rad.
Man. And then
that could totally be the case, you know. It's just it's fascinating. Maybe that's what aliens are.
That's exactly where I was gonna go next. I've heard Joe Rogan say that, where he's like, ideas are aliens, and they're looking for like they're a thing. Maybe they're just frequency. You know, they're not physical matter yet.
I'm of the belief that there is extraterrestrial life, and maybe we're just not able to perceive it, but it's around. You know, they're around, or maybe they're, you know, life exists in ways that we can't even comprehend yet. But maybe someday we will. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it.
I'm a pretty big believer in that, like different dimensional entities and things. You know, I think, you know, after your first, you know, big hallucination experience, you get cracked open to totally different ways of experiencing things.
Have you ever seen an orb or a sphere, like one of those things that moves in a way that it should not be possible by the laws of physics? Like,
I've never seen anything myself.
When I was in Southern California, I saw a couple times, because we would go out on the beach in the middle of the night. Sometimes we'd surf at night, and there's bioluminescence in the water. But a couple times we saw like a thing just like go from straight down to stop, like just above the horizon, like far enough off the coast that, you know, you could see that it was like spherical, and it had like some kind of like light around it or near it or whatever, and then it would just move at a right angle and go up at it with no like trajectory limitations. It just went like poof, poof, poof. It's like, what? No, that shouldn't be possible. You know, unless there's something out there. Like, of course, you know, 99% of these things are explainable, but I really believe there's certain things that aren't. Yeah, a couple times we saw something together with a group of people that were like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be possible.
Yeah. Oh, man. I want to experience that so bad.
Yeah. I have a friend that helped me in my mural in Nashville that saw these swears in the forest in Tennessee, like deep in the forest when he was like out hunting in like a more personal space. You know, it wasn't like hundreds of yards away. It was just there in the forest.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Wow.
swears that
Middle
like,
of the day.
on his life. Yeah, it was like during the day, but I think like lower light, whether it was like early morning or evening, and yeah, just
Yeah.
pretty nuts.
Yeah. I've had some close
Sci-fi.
family friend, very, very, just well grounded, just incredible person. No reason for making anything up. He's a very successful person and everything he does in life, and he has a just full blown, like right above his head, like right there, materializing experience of a form, and and even like it like burned, it like singed or something, a rock next to him, and he's kept the rock the rest of his life. It's a big rock, like it takes a little dolly to move it around, and he like meditates with it and stuff. And it's like, all right, man, if he says so, like
Yeah. You wonder, I like those alignments too that will happen. Like I'll have them, I've had a few in the last month where a word, like a really specific, unique word that you don't hear very often, either in a song or in a podcast. Like last night it was like Albuquerque or something, or like some super, super specific thing that you don't hear often throughout the audio will align exactly with the physical thing that I'm doing, like whether it's like writing something down. Last night it was like reading a label on like a jar of glaze, and I'd been listening to like podcasts and music, and like that word was audible as I read it on the thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's one, you know, like what is that? You know, it's something really strange. Yeah. Maybe if you listen to enough music and podcasts all alone, eventually these things just happen, but they don't just happen all the time, and it's funny when you can be aware enough to notice it. Sometimes it's striking.
I think I grew up in a little spiritual house for sure, but not religious, but also like very atheist too. And now the last several years I've been getting more and more open just to possibility, and with that has come just more magic. I feel like just more. Like before it was just like, oh, everything's, explainable, and, we're just on this rock and in the vastness of space, and we're all alone, and, all this, and there's just certain things that you can quantify, and then there's so many things you can't. And I absolutely love the pursuit of science. It's always questioning, and it's given us so much, but there's just so much that will forever be unexplainable, and to spend more time in that space, appreciating it and getting more curious, and has really just opened up a different level of like beauty in my daily experience that just really wasn't there before. And there's so many unexplainable things, and everything is subjective, and then there's like all this cool quantum physics stuff, like the double slit test. I don't know if you've heard people talk about that, where it's like, and this was like, from what I understand, like an experiment done in like the early 1900s, like the 1920s or something, but like basically like shooting photons through like a slit, and they like appear and they go through, and the whole gist is that they predicted what would happen, and what they found out was just by a human observing the experiment had an effect on the outcome. If a human was not observing it, it would do one thing. But when a human observed it, it would do another. And that opens up so much just to being like, are we the creators of our own reality?
Yeah.
And like I said kind of before, garbage in, garbage out, if you kind of see some people who are just, physically eating like bad stuff, and you can see a result, and then people who are consuming a certain kind of information, like fear-based media maybe, start to act a certain way, maybe they're a little bit more angry or upset at the world or themselves, and and so I'm starting to see like what we surround ourselves with really matters. And that's our physical environment, and that's also like the information that we bring in, beautiful things in, beautiful stuff coming out.
It's a good reminder. Yeah, what you said about like over consuming information is something that I want to kind of like keep an eye on going forward. Not.
It's easy just to get in podcast land in the studio or on a mural. You know, it's like I'll usually listen to music to get like the important stuff down when I'm like really like trying to be creative or just like work with it. But at a certain point when you're just like filling in shapes, you're just like, okay, maybe I can listen to something, and then
It's a funny way to think about it, because like I always play between the two things too, and there's certain times where I just need information, and I never really thought about it like information, but that's definitely what it is. And then sometimes you need that like soothing comfort of music that is the opposite, you know. And yeah, typically if I'm in like or I was thinking about it today about how I would address it in this conversation and associating it with like a speed. Like if I need to work quickly on a site, on a mural project, I mostly will listen to music, and it's more about just consistently being in the flow and produce. And that's the way I can keep my head on straight and relax into the process and not get distracted and not overthink things and just trust the process and the movements. And in the studio, it's like I rarely will listen to music, or it's almost like, I don't know, my mind is thirsty for information, because then maybe some of the tasks are more mundane, or there's so much cleaning and organizing that has to happen, or maybe I feel lonely, you know, and like that voice is like a friend there hanging out with you. Maybe I'm more in tune to be able to learn in those moments, and I'm more receptive. Whereas on a job, I need to be more focused and more on the ball.
Yeah. And the type of music too. Sometimes like I really want some like ramp up energy music, and I'll put on some like good DJ sets. And then sometimes I just want the classical, and it's just really soft and pretty and slow. But yeah, I kind of like DJ myself.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we gotta make some moves here. Let's put on some like higher BPM music.
Yeah, it's funny how my relationship with the AI known as Spotify Discover Weekly is like changes over time, and like so much of what I listen to when I'm listening to that is when I'm doing a mural and I'm on a site and I need that like higher pace, the BPM, and like my top fives have been like organic house, like shamanic, like you know, like all this really like weird sort of stuff that I've like been, I guess, slowly conditioning the program to like play for me when I want to just keep that momentum. And I've discovered so much music because of it, where it's not a playlist or a set. I don't know what's going to come at me. And now it's gone so much slower. It's gotten so much more like meditative and calming and relaxing. And maybe that's because I'm spending so much more time in the studio and I can sense that or something.
Yeah.
The robots are learning me.
They're like, let's slow Ian down a little bit. See what kind of art he makes.
Yeah. Information in, information out.
Yeah, it's like I very much love learning. Absolutely. Yeah. But like we've been kind of circling around this. I too am being a little bit more conscious of how much I'm taking in, and allowing just some space where I'm like, okay, no, like time to make. So I've heard some people talk about this, like the balance between consuming and creating. And, you know, great example is just, you know, cruising through social media. You're just like consuming. If you're out of balance, you're just consuming a lot more than creating. Like that's, you know, that can manifest into some, you know, mental illness, physical illness, like all, you know, something like that. So just being a little bit more conscious of, okay, how much time am I consuming a day versus how much time am I creating a day? Yeah. And if I want one of those to be heavier than the other, I probably want it to be creating instead of consuming.
Of course.
But the information is a big part of, you know, just who I am, a curious guy. I love learning stuff. I love hearing other people talk about stuff. Yeah. And I know all filters into my art, what I make.
Yeah, I love the direction you've been going in your abstract work and your murals with lights and LEDs and motion sensing and just the purity to the forms that you've been creating, the sculptural stuff too.
Yeah, like you're going very sculptural here as well, my friend. You got some incredible things coming up.
And maybe you can be my therapist with social media in this conversation, because that's such an interesting way to think about the like consuming versus creating. And I've been having the hardest time like using social media as the tool that it is to share the work that I do and contribute to, you know, this massive feed of just stuff that's coming at us all the time with something that's, you know, wholesome and human is making this thing in the world for you to enjoy. I've been in this state for the last few years where I have the hardest time just sharing stuff because I don't know, it's not chronological. I don't feel connected to the people that I care about anymore. I feel like I'm always just getting fed, this BS, and some of it's great and some of it's not. But I feel like my relationship with social media is just completely skewed to consumption. And so little of it is creative, and I don't really know why, but I think about it every day. And I want to be posting something great every day and writing something that I'm passionate about, that I feel like could help somebody maybe that's going through a hard time that I've gone through in a similar situation or something. But it's weird. I don't know what it is, this massive block that has been holding me back, and I'm probably just overthinking it like I do with the sand art. Like, just pick up the rake and drive to the beach. Just go do it. It's like, stop freaking thinking about it.
Dude.
Having a team, having people that like edit me and contribute to my process maybe is part of it too, where it's not just like instinctual, just pop it out and let it be what it is. But I don't know what it is. I know there's a massive block for me lately. Dude, you've become really, really prolific with it and good at it.
I mean, I swing back and forth. Like, so much of what you said, I feel the exact same way. Like, I'll have a lot of fun with it, and when I do that energetically, I can feel like, and there's lots of I'm sharing, and and lately it's been like the moments that have been fun is like where I'm like talking, and it's like, this is a podcast, that's a larger format of that, but it's something that I love to do, and it's like what people have like reached out to me that they've loved the most, and it was kind of like different for me because I'm like, well, no, I'm like a visual artist. I'm supposed to be making visual art and sharing that. But there's the red flag, using the word should. When I use the word should, I know that's a red flag for myself because nothing has to be anything. And that's just a story that I'm putting on myself. And so I'll go hard and, love it. And then I'll swing into just like, I don't post anything for like a week or two. But then I like kind of beat myself up about that. I should be posting every day, and all this stuff. And it's like, I just I don't know where.
Do you have a schedule?
Where it is.
Do you like stick to do you have a plan or sort of?
I've tried it all. I've tried like, here's my like 2-week content calendar, and like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. But then I'm like, I found myself like stacking up so much before I even get started that it's like too much. And then I take no action. So I overload myself from the beginning with like this weight and pressure so much so that I just don't do it. And then I'm like, then the dangerous thing with social media is social comparison. We're always looking at, oh, well, this person, wow, they're so successful, and look at how clean and edited all their stuff is. And then just like, I was thinking about this recently, and I'm like, man, like I wanna, and this probably isn't true. I'm like, again, trying to like find out my true self, but I'm like, I've been telling myself like, I want to look really slick. Like I want to have like I need a DSLR camera only, like really I want to bring them into Lightroom and edit, just like look really slick. But I'm not a slick guy. I'm like just such a dork and weirdo.
Whatever.
But then I see like on the other spectrum, like some really badass people who don't do any of that. They're just firing stuff off, and it looks like they're having so much fun. Yeah. And they're getting so much, and I'm like, okay, I have a choice. Do I want to go the slick route or the squishy route?
Yeah.
I want to try the squishy route because then there's also just so many less steps. Because before it was like, okay, get the content, then bring it up into Adobe and edit it. And then I'm going to figure out the writing and like all this stuff. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get to all this. Like, I just seriously don't even have the time.
And then the counter is how much of like what we do day to day, just throughout the day as an artist, is like really interesting. Like, say you take your child for a little walk in the park, and like you see a form that inspires you, and you just put it out. Like, why not? Like when you speak to the camera, it just is like, it's wonderful to listen to. It's fun to watch. It's soothing, and it doesn't need to be edited at all. And that seems like something like the way that it kind of makes the most sense. And then it's authentic and it's real. And
exactly.
And you have just limitless quantity of content that you could just pluck from anything. Like, here, I'm sitting with Strider. Like, I could be putting this in my story without editing at all. And Maybe I just need to try that. Just take the leap of faith and just start putting everything out there again.
Yeah. I heard someone say, and they're like, watch out for shoulds.
Yeah.
The second you start dropping shoulds,
it's a good reminder.
You're pinning yourself into something, and it's all just a story. Like
Yeah.
our whole experience of life, we're just telling ourselves a story. Do we want it? So for me in social, it's like, do we want it to be like a 12-step process to click publish,
Right.
or is it just going to be like off the cuff and like everyone like I'm still working through this. I still haven't posted in like the last 4 days, but and you're right. You know, like most people, like we're just so used to our daily lives. But that's what people are most interested in, who aren't artists. They're just like, oh my God, like what? Like talk more about that, share that, you know, and you're like, what? This is just like what I do. But that's what's interesting. You know? I'm saying all this to myself. Come on, buddy.
It's a good lesson. Yeah. Stop thinking about the shoulds. And like, that's probably what I've been doing too, is just creating these 12 steps that I've got to do to create something worthwhile. And I never get to even step 7 or 8, and then I just don't do it because I'm like back to work, or I'm doing something I want to do, or just not focused on that. Like I spend enough time just looking at whatever I look at, let alone like, you know, over internalizing and trying to, I don't know, portray myself in a certain way. It's like I don't care, whatever.
Yeah, it's just a big like popularity contest or something. Sometimes it feels like.
Yeah,
but
I want to like contribute things and thoughts, like contribute the work that I do and thoughts and prose and messages that I feel like could help like youth that are in a tough time, you know, and because I went through tough times, you know, when I was an adolescent, when I was in college, like I would have loved to have more mentors and peers and advice and be able to relate to somebody that had been through certain things. It would help a lot.
If you could give advice to your 25-year-old self right now, what would you say to Ian? 25.
Just don't worry about money. Don't take everything so seriously. Don't take yourself so seriously. You know, just embrace the process. And what was I doing when I was 25? I was in college for a long time. Like, I definitely. That was right about when I was getting out of there and moving back up here. Yeah, I don't know. I guess give yourself space to just figure things out as you go. Don't try to constantly like latch on to a girlfriend or, you know, a certain way of doing things. Just let things come and just be content. Learn to meditate. I wish I would have discovered meditation earlier.
Oh yeah.
God, that would have been massive. But, you know, it's meant to be when it is.
Yeah. Well,
what about you?
I think, oh man.
What would you say to your 25-year-old self or your
I would say
15-year-old self?
Stop trying to be so slick.
Yeah.
Just appreciate all your quirks because they're beautiful and they make you who you are, and you're doing great. Stop trying to speed up. There's no finish line, you know, like we all just a big rush to get to the next day. But if you're always thinking of the next day, then you're never here now. So have fun, be kind to others, and have your goals, but don't get caught up living in them too much because you're missing the present. And yeah, just have fun being yourself, I think is what I'd say.
Nice. Good advice.
Yeah, I too, you know, definitely had some hard moments, but they also make us.
Yeah, that's something I've learned as an adult too, is, you know, those struggles, those things that you have to get through form your character and who you are, and
no one likes
be grateful for it.
No one likes a movie where everything goes right the whole time.
Right?
Where's the conflict, man? Where's the growth?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It is like there's good stress. That's where muscles grow. That's where we grow as individuals, I think. But living in a constant state of stress is not good.
Yeah.
All right, man. If I can ask you one more question, we can start to wrap this baby up. But
Okay. Oh boy.
what is your hope for the world, and how may art play a role in that?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that is so scary these days is just divisive, and people have become so divided. People are angry, different types of people for different reasons, but COVID taught us all that we're all in this together, and with technology and the internet and the way that information travels instantly, it's just obvious and apparent that we're this global community of people, and we're an organism, we're a one unified group. And if everyone could just remember that I think would make things go a lot smoother. and just trying to remember the value of like community in each other, and all people are people, and our relationship to this planet is fragile, and we need to take care of it and take care of each other, and art is a way to hopefully like bridge gaps to people that maybe you can't connect with personally or in real time, and maybe it's a way to expand those ideas for others and let those ideas reach beyond our personal reach, and art can be a vehicle for sharing those good ideas and connecting us all together. Keeping things positive,
Yeah.
moving forward one day at a time. Like we're all struggling with something, we're all dealing with our own stuff, and being an artist, making art is just a way of like being a human being. Like I've always said that everyone is an artist. Everyone is capable of doing something expressive and being creative or looking at the world differently. Even if you're an accountant or a lawyer, you're going to find a way to think through something in a way that's unique to you. And if you can pursue that type of way of living and acting and addressing something, that's creative. That can be art. It's art if you say it is. You're a human being. You have a capacity to make that decision and share it with others. And you just have to let yourself do it. Just try to do something good for yourself and for the world. Art can be a way to do that. The language.
Yeah. Oh man, brother. That's I feel that absolutely.
Doesn't make sense.
That's speaking the good word right there, my friend. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it comes up in all the conversations thus far with the podcast, but it's something, self-taught artist here, but family, lots of art in the family as well, but went through school studying cultural anthropology, and it really opened me up to different ways of being, different ways of existing, different ways of seeing, and we come into this world as fearless creators, and then for some reason a lot of us lose touch with that, and I think for a lot of adults who maybe don't have a creative practice, a way to express themselves creatively in some way, that can be an unfulfilling experience. So I always try to promote people to make sure they have some kind of creative outlet, something. Again, like we started this conversation, I was about to say it does not have to be about the end result. It's about how you feel when you make it.
Yeah.
And so we humans are creators. We are the bridge between ideas and reality. And I think the more of us that have an outlet to express ourselves, and a society that nurtures and supports each other in that, I think is moving towards a more unified, beautiful society. So that's what I want. That's what I want to see.
I'm on board. That's beautiful.
All right, Ian Ross, I want to take a second to acknowledge you. Thank you for the ripples that you bring to this world with your art, with your presence, with your thoughts. We've had so many good talks like this that I was so excited to get one recorded so that maybe some people out there,
This has been fun.
maybe something we said can touch someone in just the right way to pay it forward, because it was paid forward to us. And so the waves continue to roll. Man, we had some good conversations when we went on that trip to Cambodia.
Yeah, definitely.
That was an epic trip.
Hopefully we can travel again someday.
Yeah. So thank you for everything that you bring to this world. You are an incredible creator, thinker, friend, and human. So thank you for what you've created thus far, and we can't wait to see what you got coming up next. The path is always evolving with you, and so it's a really fun ride to watch you experiment and grow and what comes through you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast, and I think it's got a big future.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'm honored to be your friend.
All right. Thank you. So maybe last thing would be, do you have any upcoming things that you want to talk about? And finally, where people can find you?
Yeah, just Ian Ross Art on Instagram. I still check messages and I still use it. I just need to get better at posting and sharing. And if anyone has any suggestions with how to do that, I'd love to hear it. But no, that's it. I've got shows coming up at some point, and murals and rake art and all that kind of good stuff. but nothing that's set in stone that I'm advertising at the moment. So, I don't know. Somebody reach out and remind me how to use social media and post again. That's all my ask of the audience.
Ian Ross needs a content creator manager, everybody.
I need a social media manager, maybe.
He needs someone to remind him to not use the word should. So.
Yes. I wonder how many times I said it. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, I need that too. So maybe you got 2 jobs in one. Maybe
All
we
right.
can split the person.
Definitely.
We'll pay one person for us.
Right on.
Sweet, dude. All right. We'll wrap this baby up. Ian, thank you again.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ian Ross as much as I did. As you can tell, he is just one of the most genuine, incredible, creative people on the planet. So please give Ian some love. Head to his website. Check him out on social media. He's doing incredible things, and someone that is truly leveraging his skill in the creative arts as a way to bring positive change for culture and the planet. So until next time, thank you all so much, and I'll see you next.